Hey folks, are you ready for an incredible tutorial? That's right. This is either the follow-up to the New Year's Day live sewing event or a cover-up for a technical disaster hopefully we're not having. Either way, are you ready? Let's get stitching. Well, welcome back everybody to what I'm hoping is actually a tutorial and not a technical cover-up. Meaning that yes, this is the follow-up video for the New Year's Day live sewing event, and I always make it in advance just in case something goes wrong with the live feed and I'm not able to be there with all of you. So if this has happened, I apologize. We love you and we will be here soon again live. But what really this probably is a couple of days after New Year's Day. We are all celebrating our successes, having a great time showing our photographs on the Facebook group of how far we've gotten along in our quilt. If you don't know at all what I'm talking about, let me start you from the beginning. Hello everybody, my name is Rob Appell. I'm a quilt maker from Stitchin Heaven in Quitman, Texas, and we have started a tradition. This is our 4th annual New Year's Eve or New Year's Day sew along, depending on which day of the week it falls on. We do a live sewing event on camera, myself and Tiffany Hayes as the instructors the last few years. That's where we came up with this fun carefree quilter or passion for precision quilter, Team Rob, Team Tiffany kind of thing, and we've had a lot of fun with it this year. We have 2 different colorways we're working from, and this is going to be the instructions for all of the steps you need to know to make the entire quilt. But because the original concept is a mystery project, I'm going to also teach it today on camera as a mystery going along, assuming you're receiving the pages as we go kind of thing. So anyways, we'll be working off of my pattern today, Rob's colorway in the red, white, and blue. The quilt will finish exactly the same regardless of whose colorway team you're on. And then the other thing about the Team Rob and Team Tiffany, and today you'll be I'm going to just say you're going to be open to my instructions. Team Rob is the carefree quilter, meaning I'm not going to press all of my seams open. I'm going to do my best to trim. I'm going to do my best to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but really I'm going to do my best to get the quilt done. Now this is not a race. This is not a rush. This is not a hurry in any way, shape, or form. This is really just a fun way for us to share the community, the love, and the passion for quilt making together. So if you're watching this a few days after New Year's Day and you're still stitching, don't be concerned, folks. Nobody really, well, maybe Eleanor Burns, but nobody else should be making a quilt in a day. So anyways, let's dive into the pattern. Let's get started. We're going to have a bunch of fun. You received early cutting instructions if you had signed up for the event via email. Now you're working from your free pattern, which is going to go ahead and give you the colorway information, the cutting and the sub-cutting information, and I'm happen to be working from a kit from Stitchin Heaven, and so everything has come either in strips or in squares, and I just need to now go ahead to make it easy for us all to see. Take them out of the packaging, but I'm going to keep them organized because of their labeling. There is one package we're not going to use at all today, and it's called binding, folks. That goes on at the end of the project, so go ahead and set that aside. You've already got one step totally taken care of. See how easy this is? And now I'm going to take a moment, unpack here, and I'll be right back with step 1 in the mystery project. Okay folks, now that we are unpacked and organized, let's break this down and start sewing on step 1 and actually step 2 and step 3. I promise to keep it a mystery, and now there's already a spoiler alert in play, but we are going to start making some of our strip sets. So we're going to be matching our strip 1 with strip 2, and we're going to make 4 of these. We're going to match strip 1 and strip 3. We're going to make 4 of these, and we're going to match strip 2 and 3, and we're going to make 2 of those. I'm going to show you how to sew it together right away. These are 2.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric, and if you've never strip pieced before, one of my techniques is just lining up the edges, of course right sides together. I'm over at my sewing machine, and I just have a regular neutral blue thread in for all of my sewing today. And I've got a little bit shorter stitch length, about a 2 millimeter, and I've got this edge guide, and this edge guide is going to help me keep all of my 1/4 inches the same throughout the day. I've got a lot of stitching to do, so I want it all to be as accurate as possible. Even as a carefree quilter, having those points get close is important to me. So you can see I've just got a nice even, slow little pace. If I need to stop and readjust, I should have my needle in the down position like that there. And then I'm just always looking at this edge to make sure that I can see both of my fabrics there lined up nice. And we're going to go ahead and sew all of these fabrics together 2 by 2, strips 1 and 2, strips 1 and 3, and strips 2 and 3 all together. Don't worry if they don't line up perfectly, because our next step will be sub-cutting those after we press. Now you're going to hear me say as often as possible today, press to the dark side. And so even with my two, we're just going to say reds today, I have one that's darker than the other. So in order to do that, I bring it over to a nice long ironing spot, and then I'm going to hold this darker fabric up in the air, and I'm going to press, slide, glide, whatever I'm supposed to say there. But we want a nice crisp seam allowance, folks. I want it to look nice and straight because we're going to be using this seam allowance here as our cutting in just a second. We're going to sub-cut these all down into 2.5 inch sub-cuts. And let me show you that on one of my strips here that will just make a little more sense, because you can see the seam allowance dark and light. For something like this, well, and for most of the rest of today, I'm really going to primarily use this Martelli rotary mat. I really like it, especially when you're working with small units, because it allows me to spin things around and keep things nice and accurate. So the first thing we're going to do, folks, is we're going to lay a ruler with a seam right across the seam allowance. I'm not as worried about this upper or this lower edge as I am about the crisp seam allowance. Cutting the selvages off first. Okay, and now what I want to be able to do is rotate nice and easy, because I'm dominantly right-handed. And then I'm just going to go ahead here and we're going to cut these all down into 2.5 inch sub cuts. And keep your piles of fabric like strips into like piles as you start to cut and work your way through. You might even want to put a small piece of tape or a marker or something on your ruler if you don't have a 1/2 inch line, so that you can make sure you're just sub-cutting 2.5 inch pieces as we go through. And we're going to do this with all 3 strips, and then we're going to start to build some checkerboard units. So let's go ahead and show you how to make one of those real quick, and then I can get the rest of these cut while you're finishing building yours as well. So in order to build this checkerboard unit, folks, it's going to be really easy. We're going to go ahead and just spin one of the blocks. And the nice thing about that crisp seam allowance now is, as I fold this fabric over, I should be able to do what's called nesting my seams. I'm going to kind of push the threads together there in that nice seam allowance, head on over to my machine, knowing that one seam is going one way and one is going the other. I like this approach where I can actually manipulate it, and the other one's already downhill. So you can see how nice that looks. Now the situation, though, as we come into our pressing area, is it's going to basically press to one side. I'm not going to be able to press it dark sides because I have a checkerboard. But this is the unit we're going for right here as we go through, and of both of our pieces here, I can now show you in our step 1 and in our step 2, we are going to build a total of 30 of these in each colorway. And because I mentioned, spoiler alert, here's what I can do though. I won't show you step 4 yet. Is when you come in here, we're going to make a total of 15 of the combos where we're using our 2 different strips. So this is the one you're going to watch for. Make sure as you're rotating those that you're always going dark against light, light against dark, for that cool checkerboard effect that we're going for right here as we build out these units. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more of this stitching done and tidy back up, and I'll see you for step 4 in just a moment. Okay, fantastic work, everybody. We've got a majority of our checkerboard pieces. These are called 4 patches, and they should be finishing at 4.5 inches at the moment. As a reminder, you're going to want 30 with the 1 and 2 strips, 30 with the 1 and 3 strips, and then 15 with the 2 and the 3 strips of those. And once we have all of those made, we're just going to set them aside and keep moving through our mystery together. So that actually completed steps 1, 2, and 3. And now we're on to steps 4. We're going to make what are called flying geese, which is a rectangle, as you can see, with a couple of triangles on the side, but we're going to use the snowballing technique. So we're going to need both a rectangle, which is going to now be 2.5 by 4.5. And if you're an advanced quilter, you've probably figured out, even just in the strips, our micro units we're working from in this pattern are 2.5-inch measures, if that helps you with our sizes as we go through. So right now we have a 2.5 by 4.5. And then we're going to take from our fabric, let's see, this is fabric F, and we're going to want to draw these diagonal lines corner to corner. And one of my tricks is I use a ruler, and I don't set it exactly on the corner because I also like to use a chalk pencil that's a little bit wider, and I want to make sure that I have a real accurate. So I'm just going to kind of draw that line there. This is going to be a stitched line, and what I like to do with these here now is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to set this the square on top of the rectangle first, and I'm watching this upper edge. We're going to sew right on the chalk line. Oh, and at this point, now that we've done our strip sewing, let's go ahead and remove our edge guides, and we're going to do a lot of this sewing now using the chalk as our guiding. Okay, so as we come into the sewing machine, I'm just going to use this chalk line as my sewing line. I'm looking at the chalk as it runs through the foot of my presser foot, or the toes of my presser foot, I guess I should say, like flip-flops. Okay, now this technique is really important that you do these steps so in the proper order. You could chain piece and do a bunch of these where you put one square on one rectangle. Either way, before you move on to the next piece, I need you to trim, and you can safely trim without a cutter or a ruler. You should always use a ruler, however. Set that on the ground for later. And now we're going to go ahead and press over the blue from the white, or the corner from the center, because I know not all of you are using, one or two of you out there is using Team Tiffany colors, of course. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to line this back up, and again, we're trying to form this wedge shape, the triangle, so you just want to make sure your chalk line is making that tip. And now I like to come to the corner first down here. This is just the way I've always done it. Again, dropping the presser foot, following the chalk line for sewing. Once that's been stitched, again, we're going to go ahead and gently trim, safely trim that outside excess off, save that for later. And then I'm going to go ahead and come over here and once again press away from center, away from my white background and into my dark blue there. Okay, so this is what we need to do for our step number 4. There's a total of 60 of these in this fabric with the F and the C fabrics in the project. You don't need to make all 60 at the moment, but you're going to need to do at least, let's say, 4 of them to see the next step come together. And the next step, I don't want to be another spoiler alert, folks, but as we jump in here to, here, let me just cover this up. As we jump into step 5, we're really going to do the exact same technique, but we're just now going to use our G fabric instead of our F fabric. So we're going to go ahead and use another series of the 4.5 by 2.5 of the rectangles. You'll use 2 more per of your 2.5 squares now of the lighter of the blue fabrics, and you're going to make a bunch more. As a matter of fact, you're going to make 60 more, or at least 4 more at the moment, so you can see what happens in step number 6. And I hope I'm not going too fast, but remember, my goal for today's video is just the follow-up video from us all doing it live together, so we can actually kind of move on through our steps, because we aren't trying to do all of this live. And so what our next steps really are going to be, spoiler coming again, step number 6. And we're going to build a really cool square out of the 2 units we just made by simply rotating these and sewing the blue fabrics or your colored fabrics away from the background fabrics. We're going to have a bit of a tricky, bulky situation in here, so I'm just going to lay this over, and I do my very best to get my needle to run right through that X of the seams, the threads there. And we're going to go ahead now, again, with our 1/4 inch seam guide on. We're going to come on over here, and we're just going to go ahead and get ready to start stitching. And I said that 1/4 inch seam allowance guide was on, but I hadn't fully put it back on. So I'm just keeping that so that I can really keep all of my patchwork as accurate as possible throughout the project. And now as we start stitching again, I'm just looking to hope my needle's going to land right there as it did into that cross, and that's going to help me line up my points. I'm sure my friend Tiffany has a lot more ways to get even more accurate and precise in her patchwork, but that's good enough for us here on Team Rob. There's where we're heading. And now I'm gonna go ahead and just press these over to the dark side. Okay, so as these get all put together, we've got what we need here. This is gonna be terrific. And we're actually going to get ready to move on to our next step, which is step number 7. And I don't want you to see step 8, so I'm going to cover it up. And here we go. We're going into step number 7, and we're actually going to make some half square triangles, folks. So now one of these things we're going to do for this method is we're going to make 2 at a time, and then we're going to trim them down. So hopefully you all have a slotted trimmer or maybe a block lock for 2.5 inches. Again, that's our base unit. But what we're going to now do is use our D fabric and our H fabric from our kits, or our background, which is now a 3-inch square because of the triangle math, and our fabric here, this is piece H, this is our lightest of blues, and in mine it's a really cool sky looking fabric, so you may be seeing them both as the same color right here, but I can see that this one has more blue in it. So the ones that are more blue, that's my fabric, my print, let's call it. And now I'm just going to do the same thing where I mark a diagonal line here, edge to edge, across the back. But now, folks, it's not our sewing line, but it's our guiding line, okay? So as we get ready to get back onto the machine, what we're gonna need to do now is we're gonna need to at least swing this out of the way. Now I'm going to take this, and remember, right sides together. It's a little hard to see, and if you're using our kits from Stitchin Heaven, just make sure you know which side's that right side here. And now that chalk line has just become my guideline. So I'm going to put that right up against that downed needle that's under the presser foot. It feels like I got 700 thread tails, but that's okay. Hopefully you don't. And then as we get sewing here, again, just using this as a guide. Feel free to chain piece all of your pieces, but make sure you go down one side of all of the chalk lines and then go ahead and cut that thread, take it out, and you're going to rotate all of them, come back in and sew down the other side of the chalk line, technically stitching 2 seams on one set of squares. And if you haven't seen this method before, you probably want to make sure you have something like your rotating mat again. And we're going to come in here, and you can use your slotted trimmer for all of this. First of all, like I wasn't doing earlier, but we probably always should, is use a ruler to protect your hand, a template of some kind to make that just straight cut that was on the chalk line to begin with, okay? That was easy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this slotted trimmer, and we're going for 2.5s. So make sure you're using the correct one. There's 2 in a package. So I've got my stitch line underneath the dotted line, and now I'm going to cut here, and I'm going to rotate. I actually like to cut off of the tool here, and then they've got these neat little notches. You can come in here and cut to take the dog ears. But let me show you this trick I've kind of learned, especially because you're going to be making a lot of these, and I think this is equally as accurate and maybe a little safer and more efficient. So again, once I'm lined up here on my slotted trimmer with my threads on my stitching there on my dotted line, I'm just going to cut, and I'm going to cut here. And then as I pull these threads away, I literally just make an interior cut and an interior cut here to make my own dog ears. And I guarantee those are all but perfect. So as we come over to the iron, please press into your print fabric away from your background fabric. So I'm printing into that light, or pressing into that lighter blue. Now these units here are going to be married in with 2 more 2.5-inch squares from our background, and what they do is they touch the tips. And again, I apologize, that's probably a little hard to see, but that's the blue parts of my fabric there. So what you'll find out, however, is when you go to start chain piecing all of these, if you'll notice, here's our design. But if I do this a lot, folks. If I take this and I rotate it just to double check, now I am confirming that all of the patchwork is exactly the same. So now I can line up tons and tons and tons of these. As a matter of fact, we need to make 120 half square triangles. So now we're going to do the same thing with 120 of those matched up to that background fabric, once again rotating in our seam guide for extreme accuracy on the Rob Appell fashion of accuracy, we'll call it. And now we're just going to stitch this through. And again, you can chain pieces till the cows come home, because now you know the format. So you basically have a straight edge there on the left and your new background on the right. Stitch all those together, cut those threads. Once again, when we come to the ironing board, our wool mat, I want you to go ahead and now hold up the square, not the patchwork piece, and press over to the square. I know that's a background, and I know that's going to be a lighter color for most of us, but what that does is there's just no patchwork, and as these patchworks get small, it makes life so much easier. Okay, so now we have one more rotation where we're going to bring these together to point into the center. We're actually making an hourglass. And now that those seams have been pressed over, they're going to nestle real nice, locking those together just as they are. And then we're going to come on in to that 1/4 inch seam allowance and finish out. So I do need you to make at least 4 of these before you move on to the next step complete, so that you can see what I'm going to do next. You have a total of 120, which I believe will break into 60 units complete. This will be the completed hourglass unit. And as you can see here, folks, we just completed our step number 8 if you're following along on the instructions, which really means it's time to start building our mystery blocks. So we're going to go ahead and set aside our parts and pieces. We're going to set aside the units we've been making and completing so that we can get going. And now we're going to go ahead and assemble the block. So here we go, folks. If you've cheated and watched the middle of the video first, you better close your eyes, because here it comes. This is the first block we're going to make in our mystery quilt. We're going to do 2 different blocks together before the end of the video. So let's go ahead and grab our centerpiece. And folks, the biggest part of this is watching to make sure that your dark fabrics stay aligned and your light fabrics stay aligned here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab 2 per color family to keep my darks here, to keep my lights here. Okay, and then the rest of it is going to be going ahead and taking these 4.5 inch squares that were cut from our strips or pre-cut in the kits, and those are just going to fall in here now as finished parts. So we're going to go ahead and start sewing this together as if it were an old-fashioned 9 patch with 1/4 inch seam allowances. So one of the easiest ways to do it is just grab this over here, fold it over, match it up, and I like to, when possible, have my seams on the top just so I can, whoa, golly, manage them. Sorry, I didn't realize I was going to hit the gas so fast. A couple of things you can do, folks, if you're really starting to feel like you want to get this done. By leaving these in this line here, I can now grab this one for chain piecing. And the last one. So as those come out of the machine, I'm just going to cut the threads between them and I'm going to press them. But let's find our middle unit, okay? So right now, what we want to do... Oh, what have I done now? Okay, so talking about this, using our strategies from earlier, look what we can do. We're going to press each time into our square away from our patchwork, and that's going to give us the opportunity to nest our seams later. Okay, so that means that I'm just going to go ahead, patchwork on the wool mat, press over to the solid square, and then just make sure you put it back into the proper orientation. The key would be you will be sewing on the opposite colorway, in case you happen to be noticing that you're starting to sew on the same colorway. You'd want to stop before you had to take out the seam ripper. That's not part of today's workshop, hopefully. Okay, here we go. Matching those up, probably so quick you didn't even see me do it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and sew on through. And that trick will be using the seams we're creating now to help everything line up nice and accurate in just a moment as we finish out our very first block, block 1 of our New Year's Day mystery quilt here, 2024. Okay, and again, folks, you're going to press into the solid square. And right now, I'm just randomly tossing them out onto my workstation. Oop, into the solid square, Rob. And now let's go back to what we know we need to have, which is everything lining up appropriately. And here they go. The lights, the darks, confirming all the way through darks, lights, fold it over. Oh, that's a mess. And go ahead and just match up those seam allowances as you get ready to sew these rows together now. Take your time, don't get in a rush. This is where the accuracy will really show up nice. Make sure you're leaning towards Team Tiffany at this point so that you have a beautiful quilt top as it finishes. I believe this quilt will finish about 62 by 70, and you will need a total of 15 of these blocks constructed. I'm kind of still in the habit of ironing after each seam, so I'm just going to iron this real quick before I stitch on our final row of block 1, and then I'm going to show you how to build out block 2. Make sure you're doing it correct still. Fold them over, stitch them down, and call it a finished block 1. And just 14 more of these to go, and you'll be ready for block number 2. Okay, these blocks should be coming out about 12 and a half by 12 and a half, right, if you're on Team Tiffany. And like I said, let's go ahead and move on to block number 2 now, which is really a terrific looking star block. You'll also need 15 of these. These will also be 12 and a half square when finished. And here we go. We're going to bring in those cool units we were creating, but we're going to start with our center here. We're going to have a lot of easy sewing now because most of it's already done. So we've got our dark center there, and then we're going to go ahead and just matching up, let's see, I want to grab this stack here, matching up my darker to my center, darker, isn't that pretty the way that looks? Okay, and then when it comes in here, and you want to be cautious, okay, you make sure you're getting this all lined up right, so you're going to end up with one of your solid patches in the corner. That's the easiest way as your reminder, is if you're getting one of your solid patches down here in the corner, it'll avoid you accidentally rotating one of those glowing blocks there on the side. Now again, it's just another 9 patch, and now this time you're going to have extra seams that you can use to match up for quality. So we're just going to go ahead and fold this over and match these up. But because we're not just necessarily sewing everything to a solid square like we were doing in block number 1, I am going to recommend that you maybe take the time to stitch and press and complete each row. It also gives you the opportunity to double check to make sure all of the orientation of all the little micro units are going the correct way as you go ahead. It's the same amount of sewing, but it will just help you increase accuracy, especially if you are still sewing after the same day you started, which means you've gotten tired by now. You're getting a little bit dizzy by now, probably tired of hearing my voice by now. And so we're gonna wrap this up here pretty quick as soon as we get this last awesome block done. Okay, the middle's real simple. Just make sure those darker sides are sewing onto the middle. And this one, because it is a solid center easy, you can probably just go ahead and stitch one side. And again, if you just pay attention to where that seam was, bring it right over, get it at the same time before you move on over to the ironing board. Now from these here, I'm going to press into this center square because it doesn't have any patchwork. That's just always the easiest method possible. Oh, that's so pretty the way these colors are coming together. Just a few more stitches, folks, and we'll have this all dialed in. Go ahead now and just start to sew the rows together, utilizing any seam you can to help match up for accuracy. Here, the small seam, the middle seam. We'll take the time to press it open, well, press it over, I should say, before we move on. And see what I almost did? I almost rotated it. Make sure that all those darks go around that center. And here we go. And as I'm wrapping this up, let's just talk momentarily about both of the teams again. Team Rob was about free form. That means that these points aren't going to all be perfect. These points aren't going to all match excellent. But hopefully you're not watching this video as a backup on New Year's Day, but you're watching this later on down the year. And you have also been able to watch and learn from Tiffany Hayes, an incredible designer and instructor. And she has taught us all extra ways to be even more accurate in our patchwork as we move into future of quilters, so that maybe we don't end up with seams that look like this. But let me tell you something, folks. Once this all comes together, it will most certainly keep you warm. It will most certainly be a beautiful quilt. And I'm sure you've all had a blast putting these blocks together. Let's go ahead now and talk about it, because you've done all the sewing necessary other than assembling the rows. We are going to make, like we said, 15 of each block, and now they're going to go in a checkerboard format where you go ahead and you just place them block 2, block 1, block 2, block 1 as you go. But as we checked our instructions, there's one last key. It was the same as we were doing in block 1, making sure that you rotate your block 1 so that your dark lines and your light lines of those colorways continue to flow through the quilt perfectly. That's the one thing I want you to all make sure you're doing on your design wall as you're building your rows. And I strongly recommend at this point you just follow the diagram in front of you, and or the key is keeping a dark, your darkest, your color 3 4-patch up in this upper corner as you build in each row. If you look at them, that's where they are. There's that upper corner, and that's the key to keeping your checkerboards running beautifully. Your block 2 is symmetrical, so you don't have to worry about rotation too much as it goes about in the project. So it's really just the rotations of your reds. There is no sashing that goes between these. These are going to go ahead and stitch together block by block to form out this beautiful quilt. When you're all done, you're going to need 4.5 yards of backing. We would love it if you got it from us here at Stitchin Heaven, but either way, we know you've had a great time with this project. We certainly enjoy you participating with us both in the live event and in today's tutorial, folks. Happy New Year from all of us in Quitman, Texas, especially myself here, Rob Appell at So Well, YouTube, Stitchin Heaven. I'm so blessed to have all of you here for this really fun way to kick off the new year, sewing together, quilting together, fellowshipping together. I certainly hope this helped you get through the whole project if you haven't already completed it all in one day, which nobody was trying to do anyways. I know, now I'm just rambling. I guess I don't really want to say goodbye, but it is that time in the video. So we will see you all next time. Until we have another perfect project for you all, please stay well. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.